LSU is in the final two for Bowe Bentley's services, according to Bowe himself. There's a story up on 3 right now that Steve Wilfong wrote talking about Bentley's plans in the next month as to how he's going to make a decision between LSU and Oklahoma. If you look at Bentley, he is the number 5 quarterback in the country, number 42 prospect overall, according to the folks over at On3. By every service, Bentley is a top 10 quarterback in this upcoming class. He is from Salina, Texas, and is looking to go out of the state, just a bordering state, Oklahoma and LSU. And it occurred to me in considering this that you now have to think about LSU in some pretty glowing terms when you talk about recruiting quarterbacks. Now, I know what happened in the last cycle, okay? It was right there in the middle of that. We know that Bryce Underwood picked LSU and then at the 11th hour decided to take $10 million from Oracle. So things like that happen. But when you consider LSU and what the Tigers have become at quarterback, this is now a very, very desirable place to come play. Now, I know that Joe Burrow didn't play for Joe Sloan and didn't play for Brian Kelly, but he did win a Heisman Trophy here, became the number 1 pick in the draft, and was in the Super Bowl in his second year in the NFL. And then a few short years later, Jaden Daniels came here and won a Heisman Trophy and was the second pick in the draft and had the Commanders in the NFC Championship game in year 1. And he did play for Brian Kelly, and he did play for Joe Sloan. And then Garrett Nussmeier is the leading passer returning in college football and is being mocked in the top 5 of next year's draft. So now all of a sudden, you've got this pipeline of quarterbacks that are putting up monster numbers at LSU, going to the NFL draft, getting paid very, very handsomely, and immediately having monster success. And high school players, that especially one that's going to graduate high school in 2026, that means he was 10 when Joe Burrow was getting this done. And these are his formative years. So all he knows is Joe Burrow slinging it all over the place, Jaden Daniels slinging it all over the place, Garrett Nussmeier slinging it all over the place. LSU's just a quarterbacking machine. And you know, if you've been watching this football program for 25 years, that wasn't always the case. So you've got one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and he wants to be potentially at LSU. He's going to visit both schools coming up here at the end of May and the 1st of June. He's going to head to Norman, going to head to Baton Rouge. Said he's excited to go check everything out. I'm reading this from the story that Steve Wilfong put up on 3. And you generally see these guys make a decision prior to that senior year. And then you play the senior year, most of them early enroll, and you're off and running. I feel like I have to put this caveat in every time we have this discussion. Probably isn't necessary, but it occurs to me. Like, I know he could commit and flip his commitment like Bryce Underwood. I know he could come here and transfer like 98% of the quarterbacks around college football, go to one school and transfer to another. I know that there's a reasonable chance Bowe Bentley never takes a snap at LSU. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. He hasn't even committed to LSU yet. But I think LSU being in this mix and Joe Sloan consistently putting himself in the mix for high-level quarterbacks and at the same time getting massive production from the guys who were actually on the team is just a huge positive for this program right now. I don't expect Joe Sloan to coach at LSU for 11 years. I don't think he's going to coach 9 different quarterbacks here. Coordinators have a way of moving on, that they either don't get the job done and get let go, or they do a great job and are moved on to a head coach somewhere. But he's the guy right now that's in charge of getting all this done, and right now LSU's doing a really good job of recruiting quarterbacks. I knew of Bentley's name and his ranking before I looked at his actual recruiting profile, and he is a little bit undersized, like for the prototypical quarterback. I use air quotes for that. Like, he's 6'1", 200 pounds as a high school junior. Usually you're big time, top 5, top 10 quarterbacks are 6'3", 6'4". But that doesn't seem to be as important as it once did. I think that there's a lot of guys running around 6'1", 6'2". Garrett Nussmeier's not a physically imposing dude. And Bentley is a little bit cut from that cloth. He's a Texan, got good athleticism, above average arm, massively productive at high-level Texas football. So he's got a decision to make between LSU and Oklahoma. Ben Arbuckle is the new offensive coordinator at Oklahoma. He came down from Washington State, where he did work with Cam Ward before Cam Ward went to Miami. And then he was with John Mateer last year. Mateer put up some big numbers. Now he's at Oklahoma and is going to be their starting quarterback. And a lot of people feel like he's going to put up some big numbers in the SEC. So while Oklahoma was a disaster at quarterback last year and awful on offense and fired their offensive coordinator in the middle of the season and was a complete mess, there are some attractive things about Oklahoma to this point now that they've kind of overhauled everything. The concern I would have with going to Oklahoma is Brent Venables is very, very clearly on his last leg. They're like, if he doesn't win this year, he's not going to have a job. If he does, that's fantastic. But there's a possibility that a change could be made if Oklahoma wins 6-7 games again this year, and the schedule is very, very difficult. So that's one deterrent for me about Oklahoma, but players don't generally think in those terms. They just like to talk to the guys that are there, and Arbuckle's been a productive guy in terms of developing quarterbacks. So right now, on threes predictions, Oklahoma has got 44.8%, LSU's got 23.8%, Florida State, Ohio State, Georgia are all there as well with some ranks, but he's eliminated them. It's just LSU and Oklahoma. They'll both get visits in the next 3 weeks, and you should get a decision from Bowe Bentley here coming up. I think it's important to grab a quarterback most years in the high school ranks. I just think it's good to have some of those guys. I know that LSU right now has Nussmeier, and then you went and got a transfer in Michael Van Buren. Colin Hurley is back with you. And you got Juwan Johnson running around out there. But I think it's important to add quarterbacks at high school. You understand the risk of them transferring is extremely high. But it's still worth getting one in there and just seeing if you can develop them and if they stick around. If you can't, then you got to go to the portal and make something happen. LSU's comfortable doing that as well. But I don't think you just abandon recruiting freshman quarterbacks. I think you'd like to bring some of those guys in if you possibly can. And LSU has done a really good job of that. Nussmeier's panned out to be a really, really good one. They were right there. I think they did a great job recruiting Bryce Underwood. A freak circumstance happened there where one of the richest people in the world literally decided to get involved, and that's a battle you're going to lose every single time. But right back in the mix here with Bowe Bentley. And, of course, you're aware that LSU has some real ties to quarterbacks in the following class, with Elijah Haven being here in Baton Rouge and then Colton Nussmeier being Garrett's brother over in Texas. So there are natural ties to those two guys in the year behind. So you got to keep recruiting those guys with the understanding of their risk, of their flight risk. But I think LSU will do everything they can to try to get Bowe Bentley in this class. And by all accounts, they've got a reasonable chance to do that. We'll find out his first intention here in the next couple of weeks. But I wanted to chat about that to start off the hour here on this. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.